Welcome to, let's be honest, the title probably got your attention, right? Worse than wife exchange? It sounds like the tagline for a particularly upsetting reality show on Bravo, hosted by a very judgmental peacock. But buckle up, because we're about to unpack a topic that's far more nuanced and frankly more depressing than anything you'll find on basic cable. We're talking about partner exchange, a phrase that might conjure up images of key parties in the suburbs or, that one episode of Friends. But in reality, it's a practice with deep historical roots and a complex tapestry of cultural, social, and unfortunately often exploitative aspects. Over the next few minutes, we're going to journey across continents and through history, exploring the various forms of partner exchange. We'll look at how it's practiced in some indigenous cultures as a way to strengthen community bonds, and how, in other parts of the world, it's become a twisted form of modern-day slavery. So, if you thought this was going to be a light-hearted romp through the world of consensual swingers, you might want to grab a stiff drink and settle in, because things are about to get real fast. Now, before you clutch your pearls and start building a bunker in your backyard, let's be clear. When we talk about partner exchange in a traditional context, it's rarely as simple or as salacious as it might sound. The term itself can be quite misleading, conjuring up images that are far removed from the actual practices and their cultural significance. It's essential to approach this topic with an open mind and a willingness to understand the deeper meanings behind these traditions. In certain remote communities, particularly among some tribal groups in India and Africa, the practice is deeply intertwined with cultural norms and beliefs that have existed for centuries. These traditions are not just random acts, but are embedded in the social fabric of these communities. They serve specific purposes, often related to survival, social cohesion, and the maintenance of harmony within the group. For instance, in some African tribes, partner exchange can be a way to solidify alliances between different families or clans, ensuring mutual support and cooperation. Take, for instance, the practice of wife lending among certain nomadic tribes in the Himalayas. This practice, while it may sound shocking to outsiders, is often rooted in the harsh realities of nomadic life. In these communities, survival often depends on strong social networks and mutual support. Wife lending can be a way to strengthen these networks, ensuring that everyone in the community has access to the resources and support they need to survive in a challenging environment. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wife lending, that sounds less like a cultural practice and more like something you'd find advertised on the dark web. It's a natural reaction, given how different these practices are from what most of us are used to. But it's important to remember that these traditions have evolved over centuries and are deeply embedded in the cultural context of these communities. They are not about exploitation or abuse, but about maintaining social harmony and ensuring the survival of the group. And look, you're not wrong to be a bit squeamish. It's a term that makes even the most open-minded anthropologist wince a bit, but anthropologists also understand that cultural practices must be viewed within their own contexts. What might seem strange or even repugnant to us can have a completely different meaning and significance in another culture. It's a reminder of the incredible diversity of human societies and the many different ways people have found to organize their lives and ensure their survival. But here's the thing, in these communities, the practice is often about far more than just, shall we say, spicing things up in the bedroom. It's about survival, social cohesion, and mutual support. In many cases, these practices are a way to ensure that everyone in the community has access to the resources they need to survive. They can also be a way to strengthen social bonds and ensure that everyone feels a sense of belonging and support. It's often tied to notions of hospitality, resource sharing, and yes, even strengthening social bonds. In many cultures, hospitality is a deeply ingrained value, and sharing resources, including partners, can be seen as the ultimate act of generosity and trust. It's a way to ensure that everyone in the community feels supported and valued, and it can help to build strong, resilient social networks that are essential for survival in challenging environments. Think of it less like casual Friday at the office and more like a complex system of bartering and reciprocal obligation. In these communities, relationships are often based on mutual support and reciprocity, and partner exchange can be a way to reinforce these values. It's a way to ensure that everyone in the community is taken care of and that resources are shared fairly and equitably. Of course, it's important to acknowledge that even within these cultures, the practice isn't always without its critics. There are often debates and discussions about the ethics and implications of these practices, and not everyone in the community may agree with them. It's a reminder that cultural practices are not static, but are constantly evolving and being reinterpreted in response to changing circumstances and values. There are often power imbalances and issues of consent that are difficult to ignore, and we'll delve into those complexities a bit later. It's important to approach these topics with sensitivity and an understanding of the broader cultural context. While these practices may seem strange or even troubling to us, they are often deeply meaningful and significant to the people who practice them. But for now, understand that these practices, however unusual they may seem, are deeply rooted in cultural contexts that are far removed from our own. They are a testament to the incredible diversity of human societies and the many different ways people have found to organize their lives and ensure their survival. By approaching these topics with an open mind and a willingness to learn, we can gain a deeper understanding of the rich tapestry of human culture and the many different ways people have found to live and thrive in a complex and challenging world. Okay, so we have journeyed through the mountains of the Himalayas and the deserts of Africa, exploring the complexities of partner exchange in traditional cultures. Now let's fast forward a few centuries and a few thousand miles to, well, basically everywhere with Wi-Fi, because believe it or not, partner swapping, or as it's more politely known, swinging, is alive and well in the modern world. Gone are the days of discreet key parties in dimly lit suburban homes. Well, mostly gone. The point is, the internet has ushered in a whole new era of open relationships and alternative lifestyles, with websites, apps, and online communities dedicated to connecting like-minded individuals and couples looking to, shall we say, diversify their portfolios of intimacy. Now, before you start frantically deleting your browser history, let's be clear. Modern swinging is, at its core, about consensual adults exploring their sexuality and relationships within agreed-upon boundaries. Think of it like a carefully negotiated game of badminton, but with more emotional baggage and significantly less shuttlecocks. But just like with anything involving human relationships and, well, genitals, things can get complicated. So let's untangle the knotted G-string of modern swinging and see what makes it tick, shall we? All right, buckle up, because we're about to wade into some truly grim territory. This isn't just a story, it's a harsh reality that many people face every single day. We're diving deep into the dark waters of exploitation and human trafficking, where the lines between cultural practices and outright abuse blur dangerously. So far, we've talked about partner exchange in the context of cultural practices and consensual adult arrangements. These are scenarios where mutual respect and agreement are the cornerstones, and everyone involved has a say in the matter. But what happens when that choice is stripped away? But now we need to address the elephant in the room, or rather, the very large, very predatory rhinoceros rampaging through the global village exploitation. This isn't just a minor issue, it's a colossal problem that affects millions of lives worldwide. See, in some parts of the world, partner exchange isn't about cultural quirks or kinky bedroom agreements. It's a grim reality where individuals, often women and children, are treated as mere commodities. This isn't about love or mutual respect. It's about power dynamics and control. It's about power, control, and the outright trade of human beings. Imagine living in a world where your fate is decided by someone else, where your body and your life are not your own. This is the stark reality for many who fall victim to these heinous practices. We're talking about situations where women primarily are treated as commodities, traded between families or groups as if they were livestock or, God forbid, used cars with questionable mileage. These women have no say in their fate, no control over their lives. This isn't some abstract concept happening in a far-off land that we can conveniently ignore. It's a pressing issue that demands our attention and action. The world is interconnected, and what happens in one part of the globe can have ripple effects everywhere. This is happening right now in regions like South Asia, conflict zones in Africa, and parts of the Middle East. These areas are often plagued by poverty, conflict, and deeply entrenched gender inequalities, creating a fertile ground for exploitation to thrive. Women are being forced into marriages, often with much older men, as a way to settle debts, resolve disputes, or simply because they are seen as property to be bartered away. These forced marriages strip women of their autonomy and subject them to a life of servitude and abuse. And let's be clear, this isn't tradition we're talking about, no matter how much some people try to dress it up as such. This is a gross violation of human rights. Masquerading under the guise of cultural norms, it's a perversion of tradition used to justify the unjustifiable. This is abuse, plain and simple. It's a crime against humanity that should be condemned and eradicated. We must call it what it is and take a stand against it. Human rights are universal, and no one should be subjected to such inhumane treatment. It's a violation of fundamental human rights, and it thrives in environments where poverty, conflict, and deeply ingrained gender inequality have created a perfect storm of vulnerability. These conditions make it easy for traffickers and exploiters to prey on the most vulnerable. Poverty is a significant driver of exploitation when families are struggling to survive. They may feel they have no choice but to sell their daughters into marriage or labor. This isn't a choice. It's a desperate act born out of necessity. We need to address the root causes of poverty and provide support to these communities to break the cycle of exploitation. Ending exploitation and trafficking requires a collective effort. Governments, NGOs, and individuals must work together to create awareness, enforce laws, and support victims. We need to shine a light on these dark practices and ensure that everyone, regardless of where they live, is protected and valued. Together, we can make a difference. By raising our voices, supporting initiatives that combat trafficking, and fostering a culture of respect and equality, we can help put an end to these atrocities. It's a long road ahead, but every step we take brings us closer to a world where exploitation and trafficking are relics of the past. Right, so we've covered cultures and criminals, but what about those who claim to have a direct line to the Almighty? These are the individuals who believe their divine connection grants them the authority to dictate the lives of others, often in ways that are deeply troubling and harmful. You know, the folks who think their interpretation of a holy book justifies some truly messed up behavior. They often present themselves as the ultimate moral authority, using their religious texts as a shield to deflect any criticism or questioning of their actions. Well, strap in, because we're about to delve into the murky world of religious and cult-influenced partner exchange, where faith and manipulation get tangled up in a way that would make even the most devout person question their beliefs. This isn't just about fringe groups, it's about understanding how deeply ingrained these practices can be and the devastating impact they have on individuals and communities. Now, let's be clear, criticizing harmful practices within certain religious groups is not the same as attacking religion as a whole. Religion, in its many forms, can be a source of comfort, community, and moral guidance for millions of people around the world. However, when religious beliefs are twisted to justify control and abuse, it becomes a serious issue that needs to be addressed. But when faith becomes a weapon used to control and exploit people, especially in the realm of relationships and sexuality, we have a duty to call it out. This isn't about attacking faith itself, but rather about exposing the ways in which it can be misused to harm others. And trust me, there are plenty of examples where the lines between religious freedom and outright abuse become as blurry as a televangelist's explanation of their offshore bank accounts. These situations often involve charismatic leaders who exploit their followers' faith for personal gain, whether it's financial, sexual, or otherwise. Take, for instance, certain polygamous sects, particularly those that operate on the fringes of society. These groups often isolate themselves from the outside world, creating insular communities where the leader's word is law and dissent is not tolerated. We're talking about groups where the leader, often a self-proclaimed prophet with a penchant for accumulating wives like their Pokemon cards, dictates who marries whom. This isn't about love or mutual consent, it's about control and power, with the leader deciding the fates of his followers, often with young girls forced into unions with much older men. These marriages are not based on mutual respect or affection, but on the leader's desire to maintain control and expand his influence. And they justify it all in the name of God, claiming it's their religious duty to live this way. This manipulation of faith is not only morally reprehensible, but also deeply damaging to the individuals involved. But let's not pretend this is about piety. This is about power. It's about leaders using religion as a tool to control their followers, to bend them to their will, and to exploit them for their own gain. It's about men using religion as a shield to control women, their bodies, and their lives. This kind of control is insidious, often cloaked in the language of faith and duty, making it difficult for those within the community to see it for what it truly is. And the truly tragic part is that many of these women are born into these communities, indoctrinated from a young age to believe this is the only acceptable way of life. They grow up with limited exposure to the outside world, making it incredibly difficult for them to envision any other way of living. This cycle of abuse and control is perpetuated through generations, with each new member of the community being taught to accept their place within the hierarchy. Breaking free from such a system requires immense courage and support, often from outside the community. It's important to recognize the signs of such manipulation and control, and to offer support to those who are trying to escape. Education and awareness are key in helping individuals understand that they have the right to make their own choices, free from coercion and fear. By shining a light on these practices, we can help to dismantle the structures that allow such abuse to flourish. It's a difficult and often dangerous path, but it's one that must be taken if we are to protect the vulnerable and uphold the principles of justice and human dignity. In the end, it's about creating a world where faith is a source of strength and comfort, not a tool for manipulation and control. A world where everyone has the freedom to live their lives according to their own beliefs without fear of exploitation or abuse. So there you have it, the wild, weird, and often deeply disturbing world of partner exchange in all its varied forms. We've journeyed from the remote villages of India to the shadowy corners of the internet, encountering everything from ancient traditions to modern-day cults. And while the practice of partner exchange varies widely across different contexts, it's crucial to distinguish between consensual and non-consensual forms. One involves adults making choices about their own relationships, while the other involves exploitation, abuse, and the violation of fundamental human rights. Understanding these practices helps us address the underlying issues of gender inequality, poverty, and exploitation that plague so many corners of our world. It's not enough to simply acknowledge these issues exist. We must actively challenge harmful norms, support survivors, and work towards a future where everyone has the freedom to make their own choices about their bodies and their relationships. Thank you for watching, and let's continue to advocate for human rights and equality worldwide.